Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight we have a great topic. Tonight we are looking at those Blue Oyster Cult related albums. So everyone talks Blue Oyster Cult, but who's talking about all those side projects? We are in the Contrarians, so let's get started. Welcome to the Contrarians and the Titan. I want to welcome the panel. I've got Matt and Bill here tonight, and these two gentlemen are going to talk Blue Oyster Cult. They are going to talk about Blue Oyster Cult adjacent. We're going to talk about those projects or albums that have Blue Oyster Cult members in them, or they're related to some degree. I'm really just going to let Matt take over and kind of run this show. I don't have anything to add. I'm just merely a talking head here tonight. So I want, like I said, I want to welcome Matt and Bill here tonight. Matt, I'm throwing it over to you. Let's get this started, and you can decide how you want to do it. If we're going to like go two at a time or whatever. Matt, take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you, Grant.
Got it.
So there's been a lot of adjacent projects that the various members of Blue Oyster Cult have been involved with. So definitely excited to talk about some of those and to talk about them with Bill, who has deep BOC knowledge. So very excited to participate in this. I think we'll start off by by talking about the Bouchard brothers. So both Albert and Joe are probably the most prolific in terms of their outside output. They were the first two to leave the band, and by nature were both very creative and have done lots of different projects. And so I'll throw it to you, Bill, if you want to pick out some of your favorite different releases or projects that either Albert or Joe released outside of BOC.
All right, thank you, man. I guess I'll start off with Albert, since he was the first to leave. He's kind of the senior guy, and I've said before, he's my personal favorite BOC or former BOC member. There's just something about Albert and his weird, wild creativity that has always appealed to me. He doesn't have the radio-friendly voice or anything like Donald does, but he doesn't need it. He's Albert. I mean, it's there is a particular band that Albert started with his wife at the time, Deborah Frost, Brain Surgeons, which I kind of came late to because I kind of came late to the internet, but I discovered them right around the time of this album, Piece of Work. It's a double album. It's essentially, I think of it as the Brain Surgeons' White Album, because it's really a messy, wonderful double album that is all over the place. It's warts and all. It's everything but the kitchen sink. In this particular time, the Brain Surgeons were a 5-piece. They also included David Hirschberg, who was pretty well with them for nearly the entire history. They also included the late Billy Hilfiger and Peter Bohevsky. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing Peter's name right, because I've actually never heard it said out loud. I've only read it for many years. This is actually my favorite Brains lineup also. The album starts off, this particular album, what do you think, Matt? Is this album number 5? Am I
yeah, I'd have to count them out. So we can talk a little bit about this. So the Albert's prolificness is renowned, and with the Brain Surgeons, right, there's a lot of sort of intermediate releases, right? So while they're doing the regular album, there's like a bunch of cassette stuff. They did a Christmas cassette and an acoustic one and stuff, so it's kind of hard to count them. So I actually don't know.
All right. So I was wondering, like, I was thinking of Malpractice, if it's kind of an official album, but it's also kind of, I think it mostly includes some of the stuff that you just showed, songs from those. So it's kind of a collection also.
Yeah.
But either way, by the time they got to Piece of Work in '99, this was the explosion of creativity here was just wonderful. They start off with Biloxi, which showcases these wonderful vocal harmonies, and it was absolutely not what I expected when I bought it. This is a key example. This was actually the first Brain Surgeons album I heard. So when I heard Biloxi come on, and I was thinking, oh, this is the first thing I've heard from Albert Bouchard, since essentially Fire of Unknown Origin for me at that time. And I was kind of blindsided because it sounded nothing like Blue Oyster Cult to me. And I think that's a key I would like to mention here for all of these projects, really. If you're looking for long lost Blue Oyster Cult albums, with the possible exception of one, you're not going to find them. You're going to find these guys doing other things. You can hear definitely Blue Oyster Cult related sounds and ideas because these guys are who they are. So they're going to bring themselves to it. But this is not another Blue Oyster Cult album at all. And once you realize that you're not going to get another Blue Oyster Cult album and take these things on their own terms, for me, that's when I was able to really embrace it and enjoy them. So they have mostly originals on this album. And they even have one from Billy's song, which is it's a haunting, touching song. I guess kind of his, I don't know, I kind of think of it as his last musical testament, really, unfortunately.
Well, what year? Hey, Bill, I don't want to interrupt, but what year did that come out?
99.
99. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the first official one came out eponymous in 94. And you can see they all have the particular covers there that are very distinctive. Another thing I've always liked about them, that consistency. The same artist, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Well, it's great cover art. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's very original. They even cover Simple Man by Leonard Skinner, of all things, on this album. But it's really, for the most part, the originals on here that draw me in. And yeah, that made me realize how much I actually miss Deborah. She, to the best of my knowledge, has not done any other recording projects or band projects or anything in that time since the Brain Surgeons broke up. And me personally, I think that's a real loss. I would love to see her do something else, but don't know if it's in the cards or not. I did think of the cover art. The artist is Steve Brodner. So just for the record, you got to give him credit because he is important to the Brain Surgeons iconography, so to speak.
You're talking about Deborah Frost, prior to hooking up with Albert and forming the Brain Surgeons, she was a rock critic and a very good one, and is a real musicologist. So she has, just really deep knowledge of a lot of genres of music. So I think she brought that and her own creativity to the band, and it really was an equal partnership. And they had been working on things for quite a while. They started as the Imaginary Playmates in '87 and did several rounds of demos before they eventually kind of settled on the Brain Surgeons name, and then got to release their first record as Brain Surgeons. So, and there's a she interviewed Albert for a Modern Drummer magazine article, which is worth checking out. It's kind of neat to see where they ended up being both life and creative partners later on, but at that time, get just kind of her interviewing Albert mostly about Blue Oyster Cult.
And that's why I love doing these shows with Matt, because I always learn new stuff.
So that's good. I'll give you that.
That's awesome.
Bill, did you want to talk about Joe Bouchard and some of your favorite things that he's done?
Yeah, Joe has done many solo albums in recent years in particular, but I think my favorite project is another one featuring the late Billy Hilfiger again, along with his brother Andee and Jimmy Kakala. Am I saying that right? On drums?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. Bill, I'm gonna go out on a ledge and say yes. Sounds great.
All right, the album is the first of two from the X Brothers. It's an album called Solid Citizens. Came out in 1997. Again, much like the Brain Surgeons, it's mostly original material. And of course, Joe was known as the bass player in Blue Oyster Cult, among other things. But here he gets to branch out quite a bit more. He's credited with vocals, guitar, piano, organ, bass, and mandolin. So yeah, for those who think Joe is just the guy holding down the bass, he's so much more than that. He's a very talented overall musician. This particular album here was unfortunately the only one with Billy Hilfiger again. The next one came out a number of years later, which seemed kind of a tribute to Billy from the other three guys. And it was a good album, but this is my go-to. I find this to be a stronger album, a more cohesive band album. While Joe is the main guy, it really feels like a band. And yeah, obviously Joe does most of the, all of the lead vocals, frankly. And just something I neglected to mention also, Joe did have some minor guest appearances on Brain Surgeons releases. So the brother connection was always there. Those guys always stayed in touch one way or another here, obviously. And that kind of leads me to this particular band, Blue Coupe, which features Joe, Albert, and the wonderful Dennis Dunaway from the original Alice Cooper group. And of course, again, Joe's not on bass here. That's Dennis, because, well, Dennis really is a bass player. That's his main gig. So this is really just a fun band. They put out a few albums. This is the first. It's like these guys just got together and said, you know what, let's have a good time and let's just go out there and play music we love. And that's the feeling I always get from them. They're not doing this trying to make money, be famous, anything like that. They're just guys hanging out and having fun playing music. I really didn't expect to, being a Blue Oyster Cult fan especially, I didn't expect to enjoy Dennis's contributions as much as I did, but it might be possible that Waiting for My Ship, which is a Dennis-led song, is my favorite on this particular album. I think it's absolutely hilarious. He has this deadpan vocal, and it's such a ridiculous, clever lyric where he talks about waiting for a ship to come in, waiting for his Victoria's Secret. Yeah, if you haven't heard it, it's just goofy fun. They rock out quite a bit on this album too. There's the back cover with the guys looking like men in black getting ready to erase someone's memory. Yeah, I would love to see these guys in concert. I have not yet. Joe's the only original BOC member that I have yet to see live, so that one's a bucket list if I can catch him somehow. If I could do it with Blue Coupe, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I hope you get to do it, Bill. I did get to see them in New York, and it was pretty amazing. And the songs they did from their previous bands were so good, and they're all such professionals. Joe and Dennis played together earlier on. They were in the band Dead Ringer. So this came out in the mid '80s. It's got Neil Smith on it and Charlie Hune as well, and it has a couple of songs that were written for the teacher's soundtrack that Blue Oyster Cult was going to participate in. So
the one with 38 special on it.
What's that?
The one with 38 special.
Yeah, that's right. So that's
teacher. Okay,
you got it. Yeah. So BOC was originally reached out to do songs for the soundtrack, and they recorded 3 songs for it, and they were not chosen. Ultimately, I don't know the backstory to be included, but 2 of those show up here. So Double Talk, I think Joe wrote, and then Summa Cum Loud, Buck wrote. And then the song, I forget what the song title, either Rebel or I'm a Rebel, got rewritten for as Shadow Warrior on Club Ninja. So this album's not as good as the Joe Bouchard or the X Brothers stuff. It didn't quite work out. It's quite poppy, so it's good from a kind of completist standpoint. But I think I would agree. I think that first X Brothers is definitely my favorite of the Joe Bouchard stuff. But all the solo stuff subsequent's really good, has worthwhile stuff and everything. And you mentioned that it really sounds like a band, and they played as the Cult Brothers for quite some time, that lineup, and were gigging quite a bit and had done demos as the Cult Brothers. I think BOC stepped in and didn't let them use that name at the time. But I got to see the Cult Brothers play, and I really messed up. Travel. It was a bit of a drive for me, and they were opening for a Doors cover band called Crystal Ship. And although I liked the Doors, it was a long ride back. So I saw Cult Brothers. They were phenomenal, and then I immediately went back home. And I didn't realize Crystal Ship was the Cult Brothers with just a different singer. So that totally would have been worth staying for. But I missed out on that. All right, so Bill, do you want to should we switch and talk about then Buck Dharma, who's the other one with probably some significant output as a solo artist?
All right, yeah, absolutely. We go to the obvious here. You know, back before the original band lost Albert here. This was 1982. I guess it was around the time they lost Albert. Buck put out a solo album, and it was this one here, Flat Out. And of course, this is the CDR copy that before it was re-released that he was sending out and selling to people. So this is where I got my CD copy. I was glad to have it
Bill,
at the time.
Yeah, that's cool. Bill, is it when he sent those out? That's kind of cool. I mean, what's the quality on that like? I'm just curious.
You can tell looking at it that it's a CDR based. I mean, it's.
But I mean, sound quality wise.
Sound quality, I thought was fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of cool. Yeah.
And he did add a bonus track here. Gamera is Missing.
If I remember back in the day, I had that on CD. That was like a Japanese pressing. When it first came out on CD, I think it didn't Rock Candy or somebody reissue that, gentlemen. I think it's available now. But I mean, it is out if you need to get it. But the originally came out in Japan. I don't think it really ever got a domestic CD issue here in the States.
Yeah, I don't know. And but Bill, you mentioned the bonus track that Buck put on the CDR, Gamera is Missing. That's kind of interesting because that was recorded for, he was a columnist for the Guitars Practicing Musicians, or Guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine. And they put out releases called Guitars Practicing Musicians. And he recorded that song for that. So it's an instrumental, the cassette version of that. And then they did a later CD, second volume, the CD of, and those are really good. Like you got all these, a lot of just, really virtuoso guitar players on there, and Gamera is Missing as an instrumental. It's really cool. I mean, it's almost like little jazz fusion and everything, and you get Buck's kind of swing feel. It's so cool in that.
It's pretty simple, just him and Ron Riddle on drums, but yeah, you don't really need anybody else there. I would like to mention the idea that I've heard stories of Burning for You, the band basically begging Donald to save that for the band and not put it on his solo album, and speculation regarding if he might have had a successful solo career if he'd kept it for his own album. I tend to think probably not, because realistically, it's a great classic song. It never gets old for me, and it's a classic rock staple, but it just missed the top 40 with the Blue Oyster Cult name attached. Imagine trying to go in as Buck Dharma. It probably, frankly, would not have even made it that high just based on name recognition.
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? It is sort of a fun what if, like the comic book what if, to think about, if it was released as its own, as a Buck Dharma song. When Flat Out came out, MTV did play videos from Flat Out. It didn't really catch on, but Born to Rock, they played quite a bit, and it was even used in a clip from it was used in some of their little station ID things that they did. And could it have sort of grab. It could have been good enough that he would have been offered to do a second solo album, right? Like, so I agree, it wouldn't have been nearly as successful as the putting out his BOC, but could he have gotten a second solo album? Would that then have broken Blue Oyster Cult up earlier? Like if he's getting to do something else, if you think about the songs that then, probably Shooting Shark then goes on the second Buck Dharma album. How does that do? He could include Perfect Water on there, and then if he gets to do a third, it probably has Harvest Moon, which is really a masterpiece. So you can kind of sketch out this alternate career that he could have had. And I guess, he really, and then would he have ended up with something like his trio, the Red and the Black, that he put together? I don't know if Bill, if you were planning to talk about the Red and the Black at all. Yeah, so he puts together with the rhythm section of BOC at the time, John Rogers and Ron Riddle, this trio that's really, it's kind of like progressive pop, and sounds more like it's definitely Police influenced. He was influenced by the Police. It's a little bit King's Exodus sounding, and really a different type of thing. So could that have been the ultimate direction that he could have gone in? Bill, what do you think of the Red and the Black record?
I like it. I'm glad to have it, but it's not really one of my favorite Don related projects. It's pretty much kind of what you said about Dead Ringer earlier. I'm glad to have it in my collection, but it's really not one I listen to often. It is cool to have these other versions of Perfect Water and Harvest Moon, along with various other tracks on here, but it's more of a curiosity to me than I have to listen to that sort of album.
Yeah, I think it's one of the further afield from Blue Oyster Cult. So I think for those who really, you'd have to like the more pop side of the band, and specifically of Buck Dharma, which I do. I love the album, and I like the playing. They made a decent try, right? They did some record label showcases. They did play out live, and just probably the wrong timing. It's now later '80s, and BOC's star doesn't shine as bright at that point either. So I can imagine it was tougher to get a deal, but fun to play the mind games of what could have been. And I did, around the Flat Out time period, just a couple other things that Buck did do. He did make a guest appearance on Blotto. So on the song Metalhead, which also had a video that got played a bit on MTV, a very satirical song, and he makes a funny cameo in the video. So love that song. And then he plays on Kasim Sultan's solo album. So he plays lead guitar on 3 of the tracks. It's similar. It has some similarities to this in that, again, kind of both of them leaning into their more pop, softer side of what they can do. But Buck's got some good lead. Not long solos by any means, but some tasty guitar that he gets to contribute to that as well.
It is cool to see those guys connecting back that far, considering that Kasim would join BOC later on.
Yeah. So obviously that friendship must have been forged earlier.
Yeah, and I see that your Chasm album's got the hole in. Is yours a promo?
It is, yeah.
Whenever I've seen it, I don't think I've ever seen a Chasm album. When it came out back in the day, I don't remember ever seeing it in the store. But later I would look in the used bins and you would see them. And I swear to God, they all have that promo cut in them.
Yeah, that's what mine is. Yeah, and I didn't get it when it came out. I got it later. I was ignorant at the time, so yeah, I don't know how.
Just funny
how to get a non-cutout for that one. Okay, well, Bill, do you want to talk about maybe some any miscellaneous things? So we focused on those. Maybe just as a quick segue, just talking about before we get into maybe the miscellaneous. For the other 2 members that we didn't focus on, just real quick for Alan Lanier and Eric Bloom, they really, neither one put out their own fully realized projects. They did make guest appearances. So Alan was part of a lot of that New York scene, and worked with Sandy Pearlman quite a bit. So he's on, Jim Carroll's records. He's plays on things that Sandy was producing. So Dictator, Shakin' Street, Pavlov's Dog, The Clash, not credited necessarily in all of those. So he's, has a relationship with Patti Smith. So he's playing with her and is on those. But never did his own project, unfortunately. And then for Eric, he did have a few starts that didn't quite get fully realized. He had something called the BC Project in 1984 with Richie Kanata, which is Billy Joel's sax player. So I guess Richie had an opportunity to present some demos for a record company, and Eric was helping him demo those. He played some things as like an Eric Bloom band. So he did some things with Chuck Berge and with Bob Kulick. And they did a few gigs around New York, but again, never kind of fully came to fruition. He did some demos with Blue Sarasenko, who was a teenager, I think, at the time. I think that's when he was 17. And again, never kind of came out. And then, he had a performance. He played at Dragon Con in 1987. He put a band together to play there. And the cool part about that is that Michael Moorcock, the science fiction fantasy author, joined him on stage and performed. And he, co-wrote 3 Blue Oyster Cult songs. And that's really the only time that he performed those songs. So that's a real neat collaboration. But no recorded materials for us collectors to get our hands on. So with that, Bill, I want to talk about a favorite that maybe involves several members of the Blue Oyster Cult band?
Absolutely. This is the one I kind of referenced earlier here as one that might sound like a Blue Oyster Cult album to a degree, because some might consider this the first Blue Oyster Cult album. It's Stalk-Forrest Group, St. Cecilia. This has all the original members except for Joe. We got Andee Winter on bass here in Joe's place, but really, this has absolutely always been to me what would happen if the Blue Oyster Cult had become the Grateful Dead instead of Black Sabbath, as stories go. And it really has that vibe. It really has this old psychedelic jam vibe that again, much like the other projects, this took me a while to come around to. I had a hard time accepting it at first because it didn't connect to what I thought of as Blue Oyster Cult. But as I got deeper into things over the years, this has really become one of my favorites. I love just the freeness, the experimentation here. These guys are still pretty new, and they haven't been told what their identity is supposed to be at this point. And that's pretty cool. So here's the groovy pictures there on the back of the band at the time. And of course, they all had various goofy names bestowed upon them. Donald was the only one that kept his moniker, Buck Dharma. Everybody else retired those names quickly. This is the Rhino handmade. It came out, it was like a 5,000 copy edition. There's a ton of bonus tracks on here, original versions of songs, single versions of songs, but really just the main album itself that's the main story, and that's the one I play all the time. I kind of think it needs to be included as part of the Blue Oyster Cult discography, frankly, because it really kind of is the debut before the debut.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's phenomenal. They were, prior to that, they were the Softwood Underbelly, and, were building up quite a reputation. They were definitely a San Francisco psychedelic influenced band. And so that was in their hearts for sure. Those were recorded over 2 different sessions at quite different time periods. And so some of the songs are repeated, and it's interesting to just hear the different versions. And, Buck improvises his solos live anyways, and to hear the different versions. And it's really shocking how fully realized, as quite a young man, a guitarist he was. He's not in a heavy metal way at all. There's little to no real distortion at all on the guitars. It's quite clean sounding, but he's very quick already. He's got that jazz swing component to his playing, which Albert has as well. So, it's just a really unique sounding record. And they before they were trying to be, before you made a great point, right? Like before they were told what their identity was, and that did happen at thereafter. I think they were kind of steered to be in this stage before Les Bronstein left Software Underbelly. They were trying to be the East Coast Doors, right? And then when he left, they couldn't really pull that off. And then, of course, with Blue Oyster Cult, the sort of the value proposition to the record label was that it was going to be an American Black Sabbath. But yeah, I think you're right. Like this is probably a little bit more, unadulterated, uninfluenced creativity as very young, but talented and creative musicians. So I'm a big fan, and it was so awesome when Rhino did put that out, because all we had at that point were like nth generation tapes traded to hear those songs, and like my version was so hard to hear, and it's very well, they did such a great job. It sounds really good, so encourage people to get that.
Yeah.
If I can, so I had a couple just sort of again, not individual projects, but I think we do need to reference that both Buck and Eric Bloom appeared on Hearing Aid, and for the Stars project. So that was the Heavy Metal USA for Africa, and have the song where they all get to all the guitarists take solos, and Buck takes a really cool solo in that one, and Eric gets to sing some lines in the song. So that was really fun and enjoyable. And they're in the video that shows the making of it. They both have some good kind of quotes in there. And then, Martin Popoff talks about the cabal of writers that are involved in Blue Oyster Cult. So they've used lyricists within their circle throughout their career. And I did want to highlight one, which is David Roeder. So David Roeder wrote a couple of Blue Oyster Cult songs. And I wanted to highlight this record. So it's Bambo by the David Roeder Method. And Albert Bouchard really was the driving force behind getting this record made. He produced it. He plays drums on it. He does background vocals. He's credited as SW Underbelly on it. The lineup, it's got people who are essentially the players who did the majority of the Blue Oyster Cult Imaginos recording when it started off as an Albert Bouchard solo album. So Jack Rigg is on it, Tommy Swanchak, Tommy Mandel's on there, Kenny Aronson's on it. You get to hear his versions of the songs that were recorded by Blue Oyster Cult. So Joan Crawford and Unknown Tongue. David Roeder is a kind of an eccentric, funny guy. I understand he was a comedian for a while. So the delivery is very different. It leans in a bit more to the humor side, but it's very good. Il Duce is on here, which later Albert Bouchard's includes in the Imaginos trilogy. So that's in the second Imaginos trilogy. So it's kind of, you get to hear, the origin of that song. And then there's one, Adopt Me, which I believe was demoed at one point or presented as a demo form for inclusion in a Blue Oyster Cult album, probably I would guess Cultosaurus Erectus. I think it was around that time period, and it's the most Blue Oyster Cult sounding song on this album. It's really good. It's very cool. It's got some of the characteristics that Unknown Tongue and Joan Crawford has, and what made those good Blue Oyster Cult songs. I think the rest would not make good BOC songs, but that one's kind of worth searching out and listening to if you're like the David Roeder written Blue Oyster Cult songs.
Cool.
Very nice. I thought of one that popped into my head. I completely forgotten an appearance by Donald on in 2003. There was an album that came out called Music Machine by a guy I'm a big fan of, Eric Norlander.
Great follow.
he had been invited to play guitar on a track called Lost Highway. And he liked the song so much, apparently, that he wanted to do the vocal as well. And so he did. And it's this great haunting bluesy song. It's right up Buck's alley. And yeah, it's well worth searching out for anybody that's a fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the whole album and Eric Norlander, but to have Buck Dharma on there was just, yeah.
Yeah, great call out, Bill. That's a phenomenal song. Really good one. And another one I forgot about too is this record, To Helen with Love.
Yeah.
So this is the tribute to Helen Wheels, when Helen Robbins. So when she passed away. So this has got members, so Buck Dharma's on this, Buck's wife Sandy is on this, Albert's on this, Joe's on this. You've got most of the Dictators are on this, and really cool record. It starts off with a sort of a spoken word piece by Handsome Dick Manitoba, a little tribute to Helen, which is really cool. And then it's got some songs that were recorded as Blue Oyster Cult songs that she wrote the lyrics to, other ones that were demoed and didn't make it. It's got a Bob Dylan cover on there, so very, very cool record. And I really like the song Buck Dharma does with Sandy on that. So Hero, really unusual little song. It's almost got a little spoken word rappy type part to that, but very cool song. So that's another good one to search out.
Very nice. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. I didn't see my copy here with my Brain Surgeon CDs where it normally lives. So, yeah, I'm glad you remembered that. And there was also at least one. There was a video of the actual tribute concert, was there not? That featured.
Yeah, I think there was. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure that's on YouTube. It's been a while since I've looked at, but I think that's well worth searching out if anybody's curious about what these guys were doing around that time. Just see this weird, wild all-star lineup.
Yeah, and there's other tentacles that you can kind of follow, right, with YouTube. Buck Dharma did the put together a Buck Dharma band for a benefit concert for Ricky Browning, a 10-year-old boy with an inoperable brain tumor. He performed a concert in Atlanta, and there are some clips from that. Chuck Saden produced kind of put the concert together, and Buck generously contributed his time. The Ricky would visualize Godzilla fighting his tumor, and that's, I think, how it came to Buck's attention. And he put together a trio that plays. So it's John Michelli and Danny Miranda, and that's a chance to see live versions of those flat out songs, which weren't typically weren't played. BOC played Born to Rock, but other than that, you wouldn't really get to see any of those live. And very important reason for that concert. So it was a real tribute to those who put it together, and then just tremendous music. And to get to see Buck kind of lead a band that way live was unbelievable. There are some clips from that in YouTube as well.
Yeah, I don't think the actual video is available for sale anymore, is it?
No, I don't think it is. I think on Buck's site, though, there may be a couple of Buck's YouTube channel. I think they did release a few of the songs. All right, Grant, I think we've probably
you think you've done it?
What do you think? A lot of them? That's probably enough.
I'll tell you, I've heard of the Buck Dharma solo record. I referred to the was it Stalk-Forrest? Am I pronouncing that right?
Stalk-Forrest.
Yeah, I've got that. But all this other stuff, I had no idea there was so much material out there. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much there is of that out there. They're so prolific and such an influential band, but man, there's just solo material aplenty. So
and it's really diverse, right? So I think there's something for, BOC was a pretty diverse band, and that probably limited their marketability to some extent, right? The fact that 4 of the 5 sang fairly frequently, and that they could all write songs, and so they didn't really necessarily have a singular face for the band. But that's what makes all these other projects so great. It's what makes being a BOC fan great is there's such diverse material. So if there's certain parts of the BOC sound that you like, there's probably more of it that you can find through these solo projects. So no matter kind of what type of BOC fan you are, there's solo projects that I think would tickle your fancy.
Yeah, I was just looking online and Stalk-Forrest, I mean, there's some vinyl re-releases that came out in Europe on vinyl, green vinyl. I mean, it's out there. I haven't seen a CD. Well, they put out a CD reissue on Saga Records in Europe in 2016. So that stuff's out there. You just got to hunt for it, you know? And the first Buck Dharma solo album, it came out on Rock Candy, came out on Wounded Bird. It's got several re-releases. I don't think it's in print right now though, but it's probably on StreamYard maybe. I don't know. I haven't looked, but if you know any of these records, hey, we'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment. Let other people know what you think of these records. Really, these gentlemen are very knowledgeable, and it's just about talking music and turning you on to stuff that maybe you haven't heard. That's what it's about here on the Contrarians. So does anybody else have anything to add before we wrap it up, or does that pretty much do it?
Just at the time of this recording that we're doing, Buck Dharma just put out a song that he had originally done for the Spirits Burning project, which is a project Albert Bouchard's been involved with quite a bit. It is a Michael Moorcock, so we mentioned him before, related project, and he had written a song for one of those, which is called "The End of Every Song," and Buck just put out a video for that. Might be foreshadowing, maybe maybe even the sort of the getting near the end of the BOC career, but it's a really touching video that just came out. So and it's a wonderful song. So I really encourage people to check that out too.
All right.
Glad you mentioned that. I just saw the link for that right before we came on, so I didn't have time to check it out yet. So that's waiting for me after we're done here.
There you go. Cool. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap it up. I want to thank both of these gentlemen for coming on. I didn't have to do very much. I didn't have much to add. I like Blue Oyster Cult, but literally I was unfamiliar with all these solo projects. So I want to thank these gentlemen for coming on, doing a little talking. I didn't have to do much. Nope. If you'd like to be on these panels, you could be on these panels. We always welcome new blood here, and it's all about talking music. We have a Patreon. You can join that. There's usually content coming out there all the time. Please buy us you can also buy us a cup of coffee or a pint for our Ko-fi. We like that. We also like donations. We talk music. We don't make a lot of money. We're not looking to make money on here. We're just looking here to turn you on to stuff. So anyway, gentlemen, thank you for coming on. What's next on the Contrarians? I don't know. Something. So please like, subscribe if you haven't. And I'm going to wish these guys a good night. And if I don't see you again, have a good week. Have a good weekend. And we'll talk to you gentlemen later.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.